Pitt and Miami stay undefeated. SMU wins again. The top of the ACC, it's staying crowded.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I watched Miami win their rivalry game against the Florida State Seminoles, but I want to start, before we get into Saturday, Kenton Gibbs, I want to start on Thursday night. We're also going to talk on this episode about the ACC Players of the Week. But Kenton, Pitt is legit. And I wish I had listened to you when you had been telling me for the last couple of weeks, when I've been, kind of saying, oh, Pitt's a fluke. They're going to lose. They're probably going to lose to Syracuse, I thought. Now, as much credit as I give to Pitt, I don't know exactly what Kyle McCord thought he was doing out there, but we knew Pitt's defense was good. They had 5 interceptions on Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord on Thursday night, including 3 pick sixes, all by linebackers. They call that linebacker unit the Sharks, and now I see why, KG.
Oh, absolutely. The Sharks were beasting and feasting all over Kyle McCord, because Kyle McCord is known to have a Kyle McCord moment or two. And Dono, it's a lot like a volcano, They say if this volcano is supposed to erupt every 50 years or so, right? But what happens if that volcano goes 200 years without erupting? All of a sudden, the next time it erupts, it's like Mount Vesuvius, even though normally it's just supposed to be once or twice. Kyle McCord showed us who he is. He showed us who he is. He held it in for so long. But those pick sixes, they were calling them like the Green Goblin, man. They were, Kyle, the linebacker's right there. Kyle, throw it in between the 3 and the 5, Kyle. And he did it over and over and over again. I'll tell you what. Credit to the Pitt Panthers. Credit to them. And I will say this. While I did have the Pitt Panthers winning this game, and I was in the minority with that, I will also say I didn't see them putting belt to behind like this.
Nope.
I mean, Syracuse did you pinch them. Damn. Every time I looked up, somebody else was running with the ball towards Kyle McCord. I said, wait a minute, when did Kyle McCord start playing safety? But that's what it was, because, again, they couldn't stop turning the ball over. They couldn't get out of their own way. Now, luckily enough for Syracuse, he might have gotten all of it out in one game. But Pitt is too legit to quit, baby. Pitt is here. The Panthers arrived. And now what can everybody say? Oh, they haven't beaten anybody. Oh, they haven't beaten anybody. Hell, most of the undefeated teams right now haven't beaten anybody particularly special. So why Pitt is the only one viewed from this lens of, oh, they haven't beaten anybody is absolutely amazing. But now look, they beat one of the leading passers in the nation. They beat a team that was one of the upstart teams in the conference. They beat a team that's already bowl eligible by week 8. What more do you want from these Panthers? They are balling. They are doing their deal. And I'll tell you what, people may get on Narduzzi for leaving locker rooms dirty, but you know what else he leaves dirty? The other team. He leaves them mucky and nasty. Teams, when they play Pitt this year, look like they've been rolled hard and put away wet.
Pittsburgh, they ended up beating Syracuse 41-13 was the final score. They're 7-0 on the season. And most importantly, Kenton, I view the Pitt Panthers. I have come around. You were right. I was wrong about them. But most importantly, Pitt is the wild card now in the ACC, because we've had conversations the last couple of weeks about how there are, Pitt, of course, is still undefeated overall, undefeated in the ACC. The other 3 teams that are undefeated in the conference were the ones people had been taking more seriously, and they're still unbeaten. Miami is unbeaten overall. Clemson is unbeaten in ACC play. They were idle this past week. They're back at it this coming weekend. And SMU, they win again against Duke. We'll talk about it. They remain undefeated. Now, Miami and Pitt don't play each other in the regular season, but Pitt plays the other 2, Kenton. They play SMU this weekend. So right there, they have a chance to cement their legit status and play spoiler for one of the 3 favorites for 2 spots in the ACC Championship. And then guess who they play on November 16th? They play the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah.
So they get another opportunity to play spoiler. And who knows? It could end up being Miami versus Pitt or Pitt versus somebody else entirely for the ACC Championship game when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. But I think this begs a bigger question. Why is the ACC seen as a 2-bid league? Why? We're talking about a crowded top of the ACC. Let's take this into consideration for a second. BYU looks like they're primed to be the Big 12 champs. I don't think that too many people disagree. Maybe you could say Iowa State because they're also undefeated, I believe. And so you can make the argument. Fine. You have one team that has lost to a team that has 2 of the last national champions in Clemson. Or I'm sorry, one of the team that won 2 of the last 3 national championships in Clemson, Georgia. You have a Miami team that's undefeated, has a Heisman frontrunner, most prolific offense in the nation. And you have Pitt, who is also undefeated, who when they need to show up and show out, they do. Because this game wasn't particularly close. Why is the ACC seen as a 2-bid only league? Because let's say Pitt finishes out the season undefeated, but with only a loss to Clemson, and that loss keeps them out of the ACC championship. Why wouldn't they belong?
They should belong. But, people just expect the committee to load it up, especially with SEC teams, because when they lose to each other, it doesn't count. It's like a bye week when they lose to each other. Yeah.
And if a SMU team were to go undefeated virtually and their only loss in conference be to a Pitt, and then they run the test, but that one loss is enough to keep them out of the conference championship game, why wouldn't they belong? Again, their only loss being a 3-point loss against BYU, and that loss is aging like Angela Bassett. If you don't know, Google pictures of Angela Bassett recently. It's aging phenomenally. It's aging phenomenally.
Well, and also, let me throw another scenario, Kenton, of how wacky it could get with the ACC championship game. Because as we talked about, now Pitt is the wild card here, but people often talk about Miami, Clemson, and SMU because none of those 3 play each other, right? That if they all go unbeaten in conference, it's just left up to fate. That the tiebreaker would be the conference winning percentage of their ACC opponents, which takes it out of your control, right?
Yes.
There could be a scenario. And by the way, for those wondering, right now it would be Clemson versus Miami if the season ended today, because Clemson's opponents have the highest winning percentage, Miami's second highest, SMU's third highest. That this can still change and evolve for the next 4 games, of course. But right now it would be Clemson versus Miami. But Kenton, there could be a scenario where, let's say Miami goes undefeated and they get left out of the ACC championship game because of this tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. And then whoever loses in the championship game between Clemson and SMU would then be a 2-loss conference runner-up. Miami, as a 12-0 team who missed out on their conference championship, I believe would be in a better position to make the college football playoff than a team that gets to the ACC championship game and loses. That's how wacky this is.
Yeah, but that is kind of why I'm looking up and saying, why is the ACC only a 2-bid conference? Because to me, you shouldn't punish a team for playing in their conference championship. That should never be a punishment. That should never be a demotion. Unless it's a situation where they look so outclassed and outmanned against the team that they're playing, where it's like, all right, like, okay, they called the dogs off and still beat you by 60. Okay, I get that. Anything short of that, I really don't see a world where you should be punished for getting there and losing a close game to a team that's a serious national championship contender. So I look at this situation and I say, to hell with the ACC is a 2-bid league talk. Because I'm not seeing 2 bids. I'm seeing 3 to 4 teams that are playing phenomenal football. Phenomenal. Clemson has gotten better and better since Georgia. Miami, if that defense figures out, and here's the thing about Miami's defense, they don't even really need to be great. Just be opportunistic. How many times have we seen a great offense with an opportunistic defense make some noise in terms of any type of football, NFL or college? That's all you need sometimes. You're looking at SMU, 1 loss, and their only losses to an undefeated team. You look at Pitt. Pitt ain't got no losses, no L's in sight. You look for them. You search for them, you want to fish for them. Guess what? There are none. So I see 3 to 4 teams that if you put that SEC emblem on their chest, oh, they'd be right away. Even if they played all the bottom feeders, even if they played Mississippi State, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Florida, even if they played all those teams, don't tell me Ole Miss and all of them aren't bottom feeders, because we know. We've seen what Ole Miss looks like when they play a real team. Let's be honest. Right. So, I look at this and I say to myself, the narrative needs to change around the ACC, because there's no way you can tell me with a straight face, hey, there are 2 and 3 lost teams from other conferences that deserve a look over Pitt. No way in hell.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about a team that most everyone expected would be in that college football playoff conversation preseason. Instead, they're 1-7. They just got beaten by their rivals over the weekend. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, guys, I'm only getting started with FanDuel. And we got some big spreads this weekend. I was looking at Miami hosting Duke, which I think could be a tricky game for Miami. They're 20.5-point favorites. That's a really big number. You can find all of the action at America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel. And NFL fans, get ready to tackle all that NFL action, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton hosts Locked On Wolfpack, does an awesome job talking to NC State. I host Locked On Canes. We're still celebrating a rivalry win over the weekend. And Kenton, just to show how far Florida State has fallen so quickly. Miami just beat Florida State at home by 22 points. They even covered the spread. 36-14 was the final score. And yet, you talk to most Miami fans about that game, most of them are underwhelmed. And I'm not saying you should feel that way, because I've watched enough Miami FSU games over the years. I go back to really the late 80s, and I'm old. I go back a long way watching Miami versus Florida State. And it's one of those rivalries, throw the records out, expect the unexpected. So I do not take a 22-point win for granted. But a lot of Miami fans coming out of that game are like, well, gosh, Cam Ward didn't do a whole lot, only 208 passing yards. Miami shouldn't have even given up 2 touchdowns. They should have scored 50 on these guys. I think that goes to show how far Florida State has fallen, where Miami, if I told you before the season you win that game by 22 points, every Miami fan would sign up for that.
Oh, absolutely. But if you would have told people, hey, Florida State's going to be 1-6 going into that game, and there's going to be a curse surrounding dog doo-doo, like most people would have looked at you and said, Dono, we give you one of those. If you do that again, we're going to send you to a home, okay? We're going to put you in a place with some soft padding on all the walls. But in all seriousness, you're right in how far Florida State has fallen. I mean, it's not tough. It's just embarrassing to see how far they've dropped in a matter of literal months. It hasn't even been a full calendar year since the playoff snub. And since then, how many games has this team won? You know what I'm saying? It's been one win since you were denied the playoffs, right? And of all of those losses that they have taken in the meantime, in between time, ever since then, how many of them came by one score? It's been very few. So I understand why people are screaming and jumping and shouting about, hey, we should have blown this team out worse. There are only one-score losses since that playoff snub were to a Duke team that has literally never beaten you, to a group of 5 Memphis team, and to Georgia Tech, which is that loss is aging like an open avocado, with all due respect to Georgia Tech. I understand I understand that Haynes King is hurting out, but that team
Yeah.
at times looks rudderless without him. So, this is a situation where, of course, Miami fans are happy because they wanted to truly run it up. They wanted to truly smack him upside the head for that. What was it, 45-3 a couple years ago?
They wanted to go belt to behind, like you said. That's what they wanted.
Yeah. Listen, when you are playing your rival and they down, I know what you need. I know every time you see that situation and your rival is thinking, the only thought, Mario Cristobal said the shoe was going to be on the other foot.
Yeah.
Now, what was the score to that game when he said the shoe was going to be on the other foot?
45-3.
45-3. Belt was put to behind. Belt was put to behind, and that's what Miami fans wanted to see. Miami fans did beat up on him, but they wanted Belt to behind, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, and I part of it to me is Cam Ward, he set the bar so high for himself because in every previous game in a Miami uniform had thrown for at least 300 yards.
Right.
This one he throws 208, didn't throw a touchdown pass. He actually caught a touchdown pass, which will be good little highlight for the sizzle reel if he gets to New York in about a month and a half. That was a cool play from Elijah Arroyo. But to me, like what I don't take for granted about that win from a Miami point of view is they showed it to you on Saturday, and they've shown it to you the last couple of weeks. They no longer have a one-dimensional offense because for most of the earlier part of the season, Miami's running game sputtering, hadn't been putting up numbers, uneven run blocking. The last 2 weeks, I mean, against Louisville, which was a showcase game for the passing game and the running game, they rushed for 219 team yards. Against Florida State, when FSU was doing whatever they could to limit the big plays, and they were doing a good job. It was the first time all year Xavier Restrepo was not open all game long. So I give credit to Florida State for that. But you made Miami, you took that dimension a little bit away from Miami, and they run for 230 yards. And Damian Martinez, Kenton, there's a lot of Miami fans eating crow on him because he was part of the reason why the early season games, the running game didn't look that dynamic because he wasn't running decisively. He was dancing around a little bit, wasn't hitting the hole. The past 2 weeks, this is like Popeye after he eats the spinach. I mean, he's dragging tacklers halfway across the field. It's just all these angry runs and all these broken tackles. I mean, he looks, they were wearing uniforms last weekend that looked like Oregon State uniforms, and Damian Martinez looked like the Damian Martinez of the Cowboys, or of the what are they? The Beavers.
The Beavers, yeah. And I'll tell you this much. Damian Martinez showed us who he is, but more importantly, the offensive line for Miami showed us who they are. Because as much as people want to talk about Martinez and what he was or was not doing early in the season, were there gaping holes like there have been the last few weeks? You don't tiptoe when you see something that's like, oh, there's what else can you do? The play is designed to go here. And look at your offensive linemen. They're giving you a first class. They're giving you the Secret Service treatment. We're everywhere. Even when you think we're in plain clothes, we're still right there. Hey, go ahead, Damian. Take your time, player. Take your time. And like you said, he's finishing angry. But you know what helps you finish angry? When you don't have defensive linemen ripping at you at the line of scrimmage. When you don't have linebackers running free with full heads of steam coming at you. He is absolutely running angry. And he's running angry with small guys. That's what breaks you a 53-yard run. That's what breaks you all of these types of things that you look at with Damian Martinez. It's about, a running game is about 9 guys. The quarterback is out because the quarterbacks don't block, and the running back has the ball. Those 9 guys need to be good enough or damn good, and then the running back be special. And Damian Martinez has absolutely been at these last couple of weeks. Against Louisville, they couldn't get that young man on the ground. They couldn't do it to save their lives. You could have told them, hey, we'll rebuild the stadium and name it after each one of you players, and they still couldn't have got him on the ground. And then this week, you see a very similar thing where Florida State just got pounded and grounded into submission because time after time after time, he and Fletcher are coming with the hit you in the mouth mentality, and boy, did they do so.
So Miami has Duke this coming weekend, Kenton, and it's going to be an interesting one for me to cover because, of course, I covered Manny Diaz while he was at Miami, which was 3 years as defensive coordinator, 3 years as head coach. So he was at Miami for a long time. This will be Manny Diaz, who's now the head coach of the Blue Devils, his first trip back to Hard Rock Stadium since, getting let go by Miami after the 2021 season. So there's a lot of storylines that are going to come from that. Duke is an interesting one to me, Kenton, because if I like to, I gamble a little too much. I now just disclaimer, I do not gamble on games that involve Miami, and it's because my superstition outweighs how much I love to place wagers, because I don't want to mush anything involving Miami. But when you've got a matchup coming up, I like to guess the lines, and I'm usually pretty good at it, like within a point or two usually. I was thinking Miami would open up as maybe an 11.5-point favorite against Duke is what I was thinking, right? Double digit, but nothing too crazy. Hurricanes are 20.5-point favorites against Duke. Now, they beat Florida State at home a couple weeks ago, which, despite the fact Duke had never beaten FSU before, it's not the accomplishment that would have been in any previous year. They came really close to beating SMU, but they won the turnover margin 6-0. Couldn't win that game. They missed 3 field goals. One of them was blocked. So I don't know what to do with this Duke matchup, but 20.5 seems like a big number to me.
Oh, 20.5 absolutely is a massive number, except I think they get it. I think they cover it. I really do. There is something about a head coach going back to their old stomping grounds while in the midst of a little bit, and I don't want to, exaggerate this or blow it out the water or anything, but this is Manny Diaz going back to his home in the middle of a tough stretch. You lose to Georgia Tech. You squeak away with a win against a god-awful Florida State team. You lose to SMU in heartbreaking fashion, truly heartbreaking fashion. If any one of those kicks, and mind you, I don't think any of those kicks were from 50+, I don't believe. So with that in mind, you lose a game in that fashion, go back to your old stomping grounds where you were originally ousted as a head coach and told, hey, you're not the guy we thought you were. You're not good at this thing. And people are surprised that there's a big line here. I'm not shocked at all. I think that while in most situations, if we strip away the external and human factors of it, it would be a lesser line. The reality is we are talking about humans. We are talking about people that, being back in that stadium, hearing those fans, seeing all the sounds again, especially seeing the sounds at a level that you never got to experience, because Manny never experienced 8-0, 9-0 Miami and how those fans get. Right. So you're going to see a different side of these fans, and you have to sit there and realize, I couldn't get this. I was never deemed worthy of this. I think Duke's in trouble.
What did you make of, by the way that Diaz handled that overtime? So when I initially, I didn't watch. I watched the game on Sunday. I wasn't watching it live on Saturday. I was doing Miami post game, but I was following like the score. I saw they were in overtime, and I saw, he went for the win. So they lose in overtime. At a certain point in overtime, they force you to go for 2. They were not at that point yet. This was the first overtime. They score a touchdown. They had the second possession of overtime, so they could have conceivably tied the game and gone to the next overtime. Manny Diaz decided to go for the win. They missed on the 2-point conversion. Initially, I thought, wow, that was too ballsy. You take the points, but then I watched the game on Sunday. I thought, okay, you had so many problems kicking. He probably just thought, let's just win the game right here if we can. We either win or lose it. But still, like, you're talking an extra point. Like, it wasn't like they were lining up for a 40-yarder in the OT. Should they have taken the extra point, or did Diaz make the right roll of the dice?
My only problem is this. This wasn't so much about it. To me, it wasn't about the kicking game so much as, why don't you trust your defense? Your defense has been phenomenal all day. Yeah. All day. Your defense has been lights out, tearing at the ball, turning over Jennings all day long. Trust them. Yes, you just gave up a touchdown in 2 plays. Sure, Rashard Smith looks phenomenal on his 24-yard. He looks good. He looks good. I'm still going to say, you know what? I think that was the aberration. We went 4 quarters of football where we allowed 21 points to one of the more prolific offenses in the nation. I trust my defense. I trust them because that's what this team is built upon. More than anything else, you don't have an offensive identity that comes even close to matching what Duke's defense has been in the past couple of years, and particularly this year. So why go for it in that moment? And of course, we're all Monday morning head coaches, and if it works, we're obviously saying, "Oh, Duke's great, and he did all the things." But to me, I just look at it and I say, trust. Don't forget who brought you to the dance, okay? Because you got the prettiest girl there. You got brown skin, thick thighs, 5'10" tall, all the good things, and you say, "Oh, no, I'm bored of you. I want to try something new in a moment where you needed it the most." I just think that's a disappointment.
And by the way, kudos to SMU for winning the game. By the way, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just ripping Duke for losing. I mean, good teams find ways to win close games. And you mentioned Brashard Smith, who was phenomenal, scored the game-winning touchdown. He had I think 127 and 2 touchdowns in the game. So SMU stays unbeaten in conference play. We roll on here on Locked On ACC. We got the players of the week for Week 9. Did they get it right? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Game Time is the only ticket app that Kenton and I use. You're getting the best deals, including right before the event starts. Sometimes you can even buy tickets right after the event has started. And the prices on the Game Time app, whether you're going to a big game, a concert, comedy show, musical theater, whatever event you're going to, you're going to find the best deals at Game Time, and the prices tend to go down the closer you get to the event. Guys, there's a new feature on the app called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing feature on Game Time. It'll show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. All right, KG, players of the week. Fernando Mendoza, quarterback of the week. Cal, they won. It was not an ACC game. It was an old Pac-12 game. Cal got a big win against Oregon State, 44-7. Fernando Mendoza completed 27 of 36 passes for a career-high 364 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions in the game. We talked a little bit about Damian Martinez of Miami. He wins running back of the week this week for 148 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on 15 attempts, by the way. That's 9.9 yards per carry. So far, were those two deserving in your eyes?
Well, I absolutely see both of these guys as deserving. Like we talked about, running angry, running folks over, you do what you do. And then on Mendoza, this was a little bit of a down week for quarterbacks in the ACC as a whole.
Yeah,
not just because he won the award, but because look at all of the quarterbacks around the ACC. Who would you say had a game that would even push Mendoza for like, oh, he could have been the player of the week this week?
Certainly not Kyle McCord with 5 interceptions. Not Cam Ward had his quietest game of the season by far. Eli Holstein, it was all about his defense, not the offense. So yeah,
exactly.
This was the Mendoza week.
Exactly.
Yeah. So other player of the week winners, J.J. Jones, receiver from North Carolina. He had a career high 129 yards in this one, scored multiple touchdowns in the game. Offensive lineman Luke Pettibon from Wake Forest, the center. Defensive lineman Kamen Rucker from UNC. Linebacker Rasheem Biles from Pitt, one of the pick 6 guys from that defense. Defensive back Isaac Nwokobia from SMU. Specialist Derek Morris, the kicker from Cal, and the rookie. He's the new Holstein. Isaac Brown from Louisville. He keeps winning that award now. Eli Holstein's got to watch out.
I'll tell you what, Isaac Brown is coming on strong as of late. He is coming on extremely strong as of late. And he's been a major part of what has made this Louisville offense go down the stretch. Because objectively speaking, we know that Tyler Shuck has been better than most people anticipated. But with that being said, you're not going to see this Louisville team do much offensively without Brown setting the table as a runner. You're not going to have that happen. He will have some freshman moments. I remember a few weeks ago, there was a bad fumble against Miami. He'll have those moments. Those moments will come. But at the end of the day, you've got to trust him and lean on him, because I think Shuck is good. I don't think he's dropped back 45 times, and that's where you get your wins good. I don't think he's that good. I love the connection to him and Brooks, but I don't think that they have enough to say, hey, him dropping back 45 times, that's where we're going to get our wins. When you can come with that balanced attack, that's where Brown can truly cook and be at his best.
We've seen so many comeback wins in the ACC this year. Teams like Pitt and Miami have produced a lot of those. But Louisville just produced a great one, Kenton, because I think it was Friday night that they played against Boston College. Louisville's down 20-0. People are turning the TVs off. I'm getting texts from Miami fans that are like, wow, we stink. We barely beat that Louisville team. And then what does Louisville do? They come down from 20 points down to win the game. What was the final? 31-27 was the final. So you talk about a masterful second half comeback. We've had a lot of those in the ACC this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to say that it became clear to me halfway through the third quarter, Louisville's going to win this game.
Yeah,
Louisville's going to win this game, because when they got down 20-7, I believe it was the second quarter when they got down 20-7, and then they put up a touchdown to end the half, and I'm like,
no, they were. I think they were down 20-0, and then they put up a touchdown.
They were down 20-0 at half.
They were down 20 to. Sorry, at half they were down 20-7.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They were down 20-0, and then they scored that touchdown to get it to 20-7. And I said, oh,
right.
Okay, now, Boston College, I don't think y'all running game is as good as y'all think it is to just melt away this clock and, be done with it. Y'all are still going to need to do something here. And the reality is that team just kept fighting. That Louisville team just kept fighting, kept plugging away. The understanding that there is no 27-point play. There is no play that's going to give you that big of a comeback. You just got to chop wood and carry water. And that's what they did. And that's why Brown was the running back of the week, because even through that major deficit, Brown and company still say, you know what? We need to go to him. We need to give him the opportunity to do something with it, because if not, we're going to be in a worse off situation.
Well, huge thank you and shout out to everybody who made this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On ACC. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. We will talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.